Jake had always been an avid animal lover and loved studying the creatures and their behavior. It had been one of the reasons why he found it incredibly strange to stumble upon a group of squirrels woven together. When Jake neared them, instead of running away, the little woodland creatures stayed put. When he saw what they were standing over, he couldn't believe what he saw and burst into tears. On the ground, he saw a pendant, a necklace that he recognized immediately. It raised many questions, especially with the squirrels behaving this way. But who had the pendant belonged to? How had they lost it? And most importantly, why were the squirrels so protective over it? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Jake had only moved into this more suburban lifestyle a couple of months ago, but knew he loved it the moment he got settled. The surrounding areas were amazing, a lot of nature, and the neighbors he now had were incredibly nice. He noticed how people respected nature, feeding animals during more challenging times, especially the woman who lived across the way from him. She was an elderly lady who always had enough food for the critters that sometimes would even wait in front of her home. He would often say hi to Mrs. Pinkleberry, which she always kindly returned. However, she was more a woman who liked her solitude, and Jake respected that, regardless of how badly he wanted to talk to her about the animals. Jake knew today would be the day to do so. As he closed the door and looked toward her house, he came eye to eye with a disturbing sight. The animals who would so often wait outside of her porch were nowhere to be found. The deer, rabbits, not even a raccoon were waiting for her to give them a snack. Jake had been astounded by the sight when he first saw it, but he had gotten used to it over time. Now it was weird that none of them were there. Jake calmly made his way over to the lady's home, but as he passed the tree standing in front of her home, he saw the strangest sight. He had seen a myriad of animals here and in the area, but he had never seen them behave like this before. There underneath the tree was a bunch of squirrels, not just casually around the tree. No, these creatures almost seemed as if they were huddled around something together. They were standing over something, it seemed. He caught a glimpse of something metallic reflecting the light before it got buried underneath the squirrels again. It almost seemed as if they were guarding it. Jake crouched down and slowly made his way to the bunch of squirrels. Jake had expected the squirrels to scatter as soon as they saw him, something that to them could only be a giant come near them. Instead, the animals stayed put. However, as Jake's hand came close to the squirrel, one larger fellow jumped towards it, and before Jake could withdraw his hand, its teeth sank into his skin. With a shriek, Jake fell back, holding his hand close to his chest. He had never been bitten by a squirrel before. He had no clue they could be this territorial about an object. Jake was unsure what to do. Did he have to call animal control? Maybe he could ask the nice lady in her home? Jake grabbed a long wooden stick. He tried weaseling the object in between the squirrels' bodies. He surely hoped that this would work. Scraped the stick across the ground until he saw the cord come from underneath the squirrels as they confusedly parted ways. Jake felt a pang of dread. It was the pendant he had often seen the elderly lady wear. Maybe she had lost it? Deciding to leave the squirrels be, he approached the woman's porch and expectantly rang the doorbell. Each second felt longer than the last as Jake waited, hoping for the familiar sound of her footsteps or the creaking of her door. Shadows of doubt crept into Jake's mind. Mrs. Pinkleberry, always so punctual in her routines, was uncharacteristically absent. He tried to reassure himself. Maybe she was in the garden, or had gone out. But the weight of the pendant in his pocket served as a heavy reminder that something was amiss. Moving to the window, Jake cautiously peered inside, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mrs. Pinkleberry. But the curtains, usually drawn open to let the sun in, obscured his view, revealing only vague silhouettes and the play of shadows. Conversations among clustered neighbors painted a picture of shared concern. The gathered crowd of neighbors grew. Their faces mirrored Jake's worry, their conversations a mix of concern and confusion. Mrs. Pinkleberry was well loved, her absence deeply felt. Whispers and speculations filled the air, from the benign to the worrisome. Everyone felt a collective pull to do something, to find answers. Pooling their efforts, Jake and a few brave neighbors managed to unlock the door to Mrs. Pinkleberry's residence. Taking a collective deep breath, they cautiously stepped over the threshold. Jake's heart raced, the pendant from earlier acting as a heavy weight, anchoring him to the urgency of the situation. The once cozy interior of Mrs. Pinkleberry's home was a stark contrast to Jake's memories. Furniture overturned, personal items strewn about, and an unmistakable aura of disturbance dominated the scene. When it was Jake's turn, he recounted the odd behavior of the squirrels, the discovery of the pendant, and the haunting silence that greeted him at Mrs. The officers listened intently, marking down every detail, the pendant catching their keen eyes as a potential piece of the bigger picture. With meticulous precision, the police team combed through the house. While many were astounded by the pendant's intricate design, Jake felt compelled to set the record straight. "It's not about its monetary value," he said with emphasis. "It's what it symbolizes for Mrs. Pinkleberry." The crowd listened intently, sensing the depth of the sentiment attached to the delicate jewelry piece. Elderly neighbors with a nostalgic glint in their eyes recounted stories they had heard from Mrs. Pinkleberry herself. She'd often reminisce about the pendant, a gift from a long-lost love. Volunteers, armed with flashlights and determination, searched tirelessly. From the town's outskirts to the dense nearby woods, every conceivable location was scoured. Mrs. Pinkleberry's face, displayed on posters, seemed to watch their efforts, silently urging them on. Amidst the whirlwind of speculations, Mr. Larson, an elderly shopkeeper, stepped forward. With a tremor in his voice, he spoke of a nondescript van he'd seen parked nearby on the day of the incident. It hadn't caught his attention initially, but its lingering presence in the vicinity raised his suspicions. While most would have dismissed it, Mr. Larson, ever the meticulous observer, had jotted down the vehicle's license plate number. As he revealed the scribbled numbers to the anxious crowd, murmurs spread. With the newfound lead in hand, officers sprung into action. Time was of the essence. The license plate details were relayed to the department, leading to an intensified pursuit. Patrol cars crisscrossed the town, their sirens echoing the urgency of the hunt. Hours of sifting through records and cross-referencing databases finally paid off. A potential owner, an address, and connections emerged. The looming trees and dense underbrush hid secrets, and the police intended to unveil them. Ahead through the dense foliage, the faint glimmer of lights hinted at a structure. As the team approached the cabin, an unexpected sight met their eyes. Wildlife, predominantly squirrels, seemed to be keeping a vigilant watch around the structure. Their presence and peculiar behavior were strikingly similar to Jake's earlier encounter with the creatures in town. The forest around them was still, yet from the wooden structure before them emanated faint, muffled sounds. Were they voices? With practiced precision, officers rapidly spread out, ensuring all escape routes were covered. The element of surprise was on their side, leaving no chance for those inside. When the cabin door creaked open, a scene of despair and hope unfolded. In the dimness sat Mrs. Pinkleberry, bound but resilient. In the room's corners, two figures emerged from the shadows, their plans foiled. Within moments, they were detained, their intentions thwarted by the determined team. The town's atmosphere transformed from anxiety to celebration as news spread of Mrs. Pinkleberry's rescue. Welcoming her back, the residents expressed their joy and relief through tearful embraces and cheers. Jake, with a beaming smile, was at the forefront, embodying the town's collective sentiment. Amid the jubilation, Jake approached Mrs. Pinkleberry, the pendant in hand. As she took it, holding the symbol of hope and memories, their journey came full circle. This wasn't merely a tale of a disappearance. It highlighted the strength of community ties, enduring hope, and the indomitable human spirit.